What's good, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of Sport Exposure Podcast. As you guys know, we are here to expose sport stories, sport experiences, and create a safe space for student athletes past, present, and future. Today, we are honored to have a Super Bowl champ here, Truman Jones.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming. How you feeling?
I'm feeling great. Thank you for having me. Blessed to be here.
Absolutely. So you ready to get into it?
Yeah, let's get down to it.
All right. So here at Sport Exposure, we're all about celebrating our triumphs and learning from defeats. When you think about that motto, you think about your sport journey, what comes to mind?
What comes to mind is that there's been a lot of celebration, a lot of triumphs, and that's kind of what's seen outwardly. But I think the defeats and the lessons that are learned from that is really where most of my growth and most of my development comes from. And so a lot of that work has come from introspection and just personal reflection and isn't necessarily talked about as much. But like it's something that I'm willing to share, willing to talk about. So we'll get into some triumphs, but then we'll also get into some failures as well.
For sure. That's what I like to hear.
Yeah.
So where did football start for you? Where did everything start?
Man, football started for me, honestly, in the backyard, 47 Interlochen Drive in Atlanta. I grew up, I'm the oldest of three brothers, so I have two younger brothers, and my dad was a big football fan growing up. So that just meant we played in the backyard, we throw it around. Honestly, he'd throw it as far as he could, and we just run around and try and catch it. And that was a lot of my childhood. And then probably around first or second grade, started playing organized sports, and football started. And the thing he always told me was, this is a game that's used to teach you life lessons. It doesn't have to be anything more or anything less than that. And whenever you feel like
instilled at an early age.
At an early age. And so it was also always my choice. I was never forced to play football. So whenever I wanted to get out or stop playing, I could. But started playing in second grade and never looked back since. I've played every season since then, except for COVID when we didn't have a season. Because I feel like I've just always continued to learn and grow through that process. And then it's just opened so many doors for me too that I previously didn't think were open and available.
That's huge when it comes to sports. And having that instilled in you at a very early age is very important because a lot of us don't get that until post-college.
Right.
If we're being honest, if we're being truly honest.
Yeah.
So talk about your upbringing and how it played a part in who you are on the field. Absolutely.
My upbringing, to start, I come from a rather intellectual or academic family. Like both of my parents my mom went to Spelman, dad went to Morehouse, and then went on to do graduate school after that. Dad doing business school, mom doing graduate school in chemistry. And so having that background, education was just always super important for me, to the point that before I even started preschool, my mom was doing homeschool at the house to make sure that I was ready to go to preschool and be a good student and show up that way. So they really invested a lot in me at an early age in my development. And from there, I just always felt the responsibility and felt like I needed to live up to certain expectations. You know, there's certain things that I had to do as a student, and I always could perform and show up that way. And so my upbringing, grew up in Atlanta, and honestly, I grew up in Buckhead, which is like predominantly white part of town. Mm-hmm. So being in Buckhead as a black kid, but also being one of the smarter black kids in that space was an interesting space to be in because you just never felt like you belonged anywhere. Didn't feel like you belonged in the school because of people that were around. Granted, like I had a lot of great friends, but knew early on that I was different from everyone else. Different in terms of what my family life was like at home, the culture that I brought to the school, and then just different in terms of how I viewed academics and how I treated my studies. And so, since elementary school, have been really grinding in terms of education and like trying to better myself that way.
Before pre-K, actually.
Like, so as long as I can remember, like even elementary school, I had late nights staying up doing homework. I'd get back from football practice and be up till midnight. And it's like, why was I going so hard?
Elementary school?
Yeah, elementary school. Like, we'd play a football game that ends at 8 and I'm back home doing homework right after the game. And it's like, why was I so driven, so focused? I really can't explain it because it wasn't.
That was your norm, though.
It was the norm, exactly. Right. It was just what I was doing. And I almost didn't realize everyone wasn't doing that, you know? But so I get to
school. I know I didn't do that to college. Maybe not then either.
Yeah. And so, then all that focus on education, people started to take notice in that. And so was in public school for elementary school, went to a private school for middle and high school, a private school called Westminster. And that was really because people saw my intellect and saw what I would bring to that school and what doors it could also open for me there, as well as the fact that I was a great athlete and was playing with people in rec league who were at that private school already. And so their parents kind of brought me into that way, not recruited me, but encouraged me to look into the school and see about it for myself. And then that decision to go to private school is something that, again, I think really changed my life in a lot of ways, just because of the people that it brought me around, the opportunities it opened me up to. I don't think I would have been at Harvard if I hadn't been at that school because of certain things that happened in terms of football and people who were in the grade above me who, you know, brought coaches and scouts to the school. You know what I mean? So, yeah, that's a little bit about my upbringing, and then from there was just really working really hard and taking school seriously, like started taking honors and higher level courses in middle school. And from there, like, I don't know, you get separated into kind of these two different tracks. And, you know, a lot of my friends and people that I played sports with were in one track, and then I was in this other track with a totally different crowd. And so was always having to navigate these two different circles that I was in and find a balance between those and utilize those relationships to make me a better person. But that's like kind of been the balance of my life, honestly, is just figuring out who am I friends with, who am I working with, who am I playing sports with, and then where do I choose to spend my time.
So it sounds like education was your spearhead.
Yeah, definitely.
And you happen to be a hell of an athlete as well.
Yeah, that's honestly how I got to Harvard. I mean, I think I planned in high school, like I wanted to go to Morehouse and Georgia Tech, do a dual degree program as an engineer. And that was what I was going to do for the longest time. And it wasn't until, I started getting offers maybe my junior year of high school, but the schools weren't interesting to me. They weren't intriguing. They weren't kind of the standard that I saw myself at. And then,
are you saying that on the athletic level or educational level? Really,
an educational level. Athletic level, they were probably. I wasn't even thinking about sports in college, so they were. It was a great opportunity. Right. It was like, yeah, I would play there, but I think I might rather just be a student before I play at these schools. And it wasn't until I started picking up Ivy League offers, and I specifically remember after the Harvard offer, like when I met with the coach and he came to my school, I walked out of that meeting, called my mom, and was like, "Mom, this might be the one. Like this might be the one we're waiting on." And I just knew what Harvard meant to my family. Because another backstory, my dad went to Harvard Business School. So he went to Harvard for graduate school. I'd been around the campus and been to a reunion and saw kind of that network and what that meant to be at that university. And so could only imagine what that meant to be a part of the Harvard football team as an undergrad and coming out of high school. But I knew it was something that I really wanted to take advantage of. And so as soon as I got that one offer, it was like I was pretty much set on Harvard. Still like went through the recruiting process, looked around, but Harvard was like my top choice for sure.
Wow, I'm impressed. I'm impressed. So you mentioned navigating two different circles. Mm-hmm. Being an athlete puts you in one circle, but with your intelligence, your academic levels puts you in a whole other circle. Mm-hmm. And rarely do they ever coexist.
Right.
So how is that balanced? Because you got your team.
Yep.
That may or may not have good grades. And then you have this circle where you're flourishing in. Mm-hmm. So how was that balancing? What was that like, especially at a private school?
Right. I think I felt like I was very lucky to kind of know myself and know the person that I was. And so didn't feel like I had to fit into either of those one boxes. Like I didn't feel like, oh, because I'm an athlete, I can't be in these classes, or like I'm going to be missing out and left out on so many things. I was like, even if I am in these classes and don't eat lunch with my friends, don't see my friends during the school day, like I know I'm still one of the boys. I know I'm still one of the guys. And like when I am around them, it's going to be all good. So I feel like being comfortable with myself and really leaning into both of those identities didn't make it feel like I had to balance or navigate between them. But it was like, I'm gonna just do both things and fit in where I can. And, people were accepting and appreciative of that. And I never felt left out. It was maybe like some stories I missed or like some game I couldn't go to. But I was like, that's water under the bridge. There's nothing to worry about.
So where did that confidence come from?
My parents and grandparents. My grandmother on my mom's side specifically, like she would always sing James Brown and like I'm Black and I'm Proud and just talked about loving yourself and loving the skin that you're in. And so I was always getting compliments about, even my skin, being a dark skinned person and like being a dark skinned person at a PWI. I was just like, that's another challenge. You know what I mean?
We'll get into that. We ain't got there yet. We haven't got there yet.
But I always had their backing and their support about loving myself before I didn't even realize that I didn't love myself. And so it was almost inherent that I should believe in myself, love the skin that I'm in, and be comfortable in that because they've just taught that. So that was like my baseline. And then when certain things would come up where I'd realize I'm trying to change things about myself, I was like, wait a minute, I do love myself and love everything about me. And this is, I've been coached that way from a very young age. So I think that comes from just the positive reinforcements of my family before they even knew what they were doing, before it got to be a point where it was a problem.
That's important. I know my time in private school was short-lived, but I felt like an outcast.
Really? Outcast by so.
Yeah. I mean, I wasn't into sports yet. This was probably before middle school, before elementary school, kind of dibbled and dabbled. But it was just a different environment. The parents were different.
Yeah.
I mean, we wore uniforms, so but it was just a different vibe.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I can't imagine what it would have been like me going through that life as an athlete. Especially chasing academics at that. Because academic level is totally different at a private school.
And I think one thing you're making me remember too is athletics is what kind of brought me back to the social crowd and brought me back to the cool crowd. Because otherwise I could have been just not as social. I could have hung out with the few black kids that I had in my grade and really stayed in that lane. And those been my friends as well as the people that I was in classes with. But then athletics, I think, just broadened my reach, broadened my scope, and then allowed everyone to kind of interact with me in a way that otherwise wouldn't have been possible. And so,
in some way, I know if I was your teammate, I would be inspired. Dang, he in these classes, I don't even see him during the day. I don't even see him during the day because those are things you don't see. That's not technically the norm, if we're being honest.
Right.
Because a lot of us are pushed into just enough to get by. C's, get degrees, just enough to stay eligible. But the fact that you had education at your forefront alone is a different story.
Right.
Especially coming from home, okay, you're an amazing athlete, cool. But this education is what's going to carry you.
Exactly.
And going into your recruiting process at a private school, you mentioned a little bit you had offers, but you weren't impressed by them. Right.
Wasn't necessarily impressed. Just weren't schools that I had previously thought about before getting recruited. And so that was kind of my thing is that, I'm not going to let the offers dictate where I want to go. Because I feel like I could go to Harvard, Stanford, wherever it was coming out of high school, honestly, if I applied. Granted, committed for football and only went through that one application process. But I was like, I don't have to just take whatever opportunities are given to me because I've worked so hard to have other opportunities open. And so I think also just talking about being a great athlete, I had a conversation with some people from high school the other day, and we talk about how good our 8th grade football team was. Our 8th grade football team, when we graduated high school, or even just full picture now. So this year, 8th grade football team had 2 5-star recruits and an NFL player.
8th grade?
In 8th grade. So 5-star recruits, meaning when they got to high school, they were 5 stars. And then an NFL player later down the line. I'm the NFL player. I was not one of the 5-star recruits. And I also wasn't really a starter on that 8th grade team. I was almost a bench player, a rotational player coming off the sidelines. And so I think that's also a part of my athletic journey is that I was always a good player, would do his role really well, but I was never the star player. Get him the ball, he needs to have touches. Because on defense, it's not really like that. You can come in and make plays. And then, And then I was just never... and then on offense, I played tight end, so it was kind of just a role player in that way as well. But so I never felt like I was the guy on any team that I was on. I was always just maybe the top 5, top 10 best player, but never was the one guy. And so that always, again, just had me working so hard to improve my game, to improve my craft. And something that my dad told me at a young age, he was like, if you're and then insert any adjective here, but if you're the biggest, smartest, fastest person in any room, then you're in the wrong room. You need to be surrounded by people who are better than you to then elevate yourself and elevate your game. And so to this day, I still feel like I've never been the smartest, biggest, fastest person in any room. And so I'm just always growing and learning from what's around me. And so I think part of my trajectory in high school was also had coaches who believed in me and saw the work that I put in practice to perfect my craft. And so I think just one story that sticks out to me is high school sophomore year. Football in Georgia sophomore year is the first time you're on the varsity team and we'll practice with the varsity team. And so that means you're the youngest person, the smallest person on the team, really bottom of the totem pole. So that was my role. And again, I was a guy who had just gotten his height, just gotten his size probably the year before. And so we're still figuring out how to move and be an athlete in that.
Footwork,
exactly. And so I come in as a sophomore, but I was like, it really doesn't matter that I'm not playing or not doing anything. I still want to make improvements every day. And so it felt like I took my coaching very seriously, really listened to what they were trying to provide. And I don't know, put my best foot forward, whereas it could have been easy to just accept my role, accept my place, and chill in that. And so I say that, so sophomore year, again, started the season, wasn't playing at all, on the bench. Parents weren't even coming to the games. They were like, you know, you're not playing. Fine, whatever. And then probably halfway through the season, again, I'd had a great time practicing. The coaches saw what I was doing. So they were like, you know what, we're going to move this senior from tight end to offensive line, and then we're going to make you the starting tight end as a sophomore. And I'm like, you know, me and this guy, he outweighs me by 80 pounds, and you want me to come in and take his spot and do his job the way he was doing it? Like, that's a lot of trust, a lot of responsibility. Yeah. And I felt that, and I felt that, I leaned into that, and that I feel like made me take my job even more seriously than when I was given that role. And so stepped into that, was doing fine, was doing well. Again, nothing crazy, but was doing my job, was doing enough. Probably another 5 weeks later, senior on defense, he injures his shoulder, has a season-ending shoulder injury. Now I'm starting on defense too. So again, this is a season I didn't expect to be playing in at all. And I look up halfway through the season, and now I'm starting on both sides of the ball. Whereas there were guys who played on varsity the year before who still weren't even necessarily doing that. And so I felt like that was just a testament to trusting the process, loving practice, honestly, and loving that time and being prepared. There's a quote too by a philosopher, I'm not going to get the name, but opportunity is where luck meets preparation.
I was about to say it. I was about to say it.
And I feel like that's the story of my life, is just being so overly prepared that when something lucky does happen, then I'm ready to take advantage of that opportunity. And so, I mean, that happened in high school. And then the story continues that I was starting both sides of the ball. Team was playing really well. We'll make a run to the playoff. We go to the state championship and are playing in the Georgia Dome in 2015, win the state championship in overtime. And I was a starter on offense and defense, but again, wasn't the best player even in my grade, but it stepped into a role that was necessary just from being prepared and really taking coaching and being coachable at such a young age.
You said such a lot. You said a whole lot. And I want to talk about, because athletes feel like you got to be the best on the team. That's not how that works.
It's not how it works. It's not how it works.
Be good at what you're good at. You just never know when you're going to be needed. And especially going to college, you know that at any given moment, your starter could be out. Your starter could tweak their ankle. Like, I know playing basketball, you had to be prepared that you never know when your name is going to get called. And if you just perfect where you're at and not worry about trying to be the best, just if you're, in my terms, if you're a great rebounder, just be the best rebounder on your team.
Exactly.
Like defense, be the best defender on your team. And I took that from what you said, because it didn't seem like you was too wrapped up in trying to be the best.
No.
Like, I just was, I took the route, I'm on the team, like, there's opportunity. And when it comes my time, I'm going to be prepared. Right. And when your time came, you ran with it. Yeah. You ran with it. And it's so much in that I'm like, y'all don't have to be the best. Like, especially when we get to college, everybody's good. Everybody's the best in their state. Everybody's the best in their position. Like, you have to find a way to stick out. And I think that's also another life lesson as well. Like, you're not going to be the best at everything. Just be the best at what you're doing. You're good at. Right. And to moving on to college, I mean, you mentioned earlier when you got the call from Harvard, that was it for you. Right. What schools were on your horizon? So,
I mean, it was Harvard. I'm going to go through Ivy Leagues first. Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Penn. I definitely toured all four of those schools, had conversations with coaches, and was like very seriously considering those. I also talked to Northwestern a little bit. I talked to Duke. And other part of the story is I played lacrosse in high school. And so Duke and Penn wanted me to possibly play both football and lacrosse.
Okay.
I was pretty good. I honestly I'd made it like a Under Armour All-American team before my senior year, and that got a lot of traction and attention to like possibly playing in college, which I hadn't considered before. I was just like, let me just, try out for this team and see what's going on. And they put me on the team. But so those were the 4 to 6 schools that I was really considering. And I talked a little bit about how, being in the right position at the right time and how that happened. So there were athletes in the grade above me who were outstanding. I mean, had bigger time offers, so ACC offers, were going to SEC football camps. And so they had a lot of attention, brought a lot of people to the school. And so the year before when they're coming to recruit those people, the coach would then talk about me a little bit. And so I felt like that was also an introduction and why I got the exposure that I probably did. A lot of those guys ended up going to University of Pennsylvania, an Ivy League school. So those schools were already coming through a lot to my high school. And I feel like that contributed to then opening more doors. And also the fact that I was a student as well. Like
a hell of a student.
Yeah, a hell of a student. Right. So like Ivy League recruiting works out in that, they can only take certain players at different academic levels. The highest academic level is like what they'll call band 1, I believe, is people who can almost get into the school normally. And they'll take maybe 20 of those type players versus, only taking 1 or 2 people who definitely wouldn't get into the school. Application wouldn't even get read. And so being in that band 1 and that higher level academically, again, just gives them more space. They're maybe more willing to take a risk on a guy who they don't even know what he's going to be yet. Right. I came into Harvard and I was playing defensive line in high school, but I was light. I was little. I was like 215 pounds because I was also playing lacrosse and had to run around and do stuff. And so I came into Harvard as a linebacker, but they said, honestly, we didn't know what position you were going to play. We just knew that we wanted to have you on the team in some capacity, and we were going to figure that out later. And so I came in my freshman year, spent the entire year as a linebacker, but on the bench, really just didn't play in any games.
Most of our freshman years look like that.
Yeah,
I can relate.
Exactly. But it was great because, I don't know, it was so many things that were working in my favor. One, just being in the linebacker room with people who look at the game at such an intellectual level. Our defensive coordinator was a linebacker coach. So the person who's running the entire defense is running our meetings on a daily basis. And then 4 or 5 seniors who had been there for 5 years were also in that room. I'm learning from them how to talk about the game, how to watch film, how to even just study as a collegiate athlete. And so I take all that information. After my freshman year, I get moved to defensive end. And I told you I was like 215, 220 coming in. Defensive end, they're like, you got to be 245 pounds. So in the span of 3 months, they're like, you need to put on 25 pounds basically and be ready to play defensive end.
Did you do it?
I did do it.
3 months is not a lot of time.
It's not. I was eating myself sick most nights, honestly. And
talk about what that looked like, because a lot of athletes go through that when you get to college, specifically football players.
Yeah.
Because some kids raise shirt because they're not big enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, what did it look like? It's interesting at Harvard, too, because athletes don't get a lot of preferential treatment or like special treatment. So it's an academic school. We eat in the same dining hall, the same freshman dining hall as everybody. There's 1,000 other people. That's all the way across campus, furthest from the athletic facilities. There's not necessarily that many late night dining options offered on campus. There's like what we call brain break, where they serve, like bread, cereal, just anything that they can leave sitting out for people to eat, but no actual hot food. And so I would come back from practice or come back from whatever, eat dinner that's the thing. I started eating long meals. So I'd finish working out. We'd finish working out at 8 and I wouldn't have class until 10:15. I'm just sitting in the dining hall from 8:30 till 10:15 till I have to go to that class. Eating, not stuffing myself, but parlaying, talking, but eating the entire time though. Like consistently getting 2 plates of breakfast, doing that for lunch as well. Dinner, a big dinner, and then I'd go study in the library and would come back to brain break with like the little last night snack and would really stuff myself there with chocolate milk and bread. And because that's the thing, I'm also allergic to peanut butter. So all the coaches are like, eat peanut butter, right? Eat a peanut butter sandwich. That was never in my arsenal. So it was like straight butter on bread or like jelly sandwiches. And
he was finding a way.
Like making, I had one friend, he was putting protein powder in his cereal and eating that because he was trying to gain weight. And I was like, this is shiesty a little bit, but we're just trying to get it any way we can. And we wanted it that bad too, of like, it doesn't matter what the hour is. It doesn't matter what's open. It doesn't matter that we're broke. Like we're going to go in here and eat as much cereal and stuff as we can to put on this weight.
This was your freshman year.
This is my freshman year, like the spring of my freshman year. And it worked out. I mean, that freshman year was then the catalyst for the rest of my Harvard career. I was actually able to come from, changing position that spring. So went through spring practice, playing defensive end, playing D-line, got up to weight barely, but then also had the entire summer to like even it out and maintain it. And then that next season, I was a starter and started the next season, really had a great sophomore season. I forget how many sacks I had, but that season was cut short due to injury. Actually, I tore a tendon in my finger, tore a ligament in my finger. And so that's another story too of how I ended up deciding to forego the rest of the season and get the surgery. Because I was pre-med, wanted to go into medicine, wanted to go into surgery.
I was going to bring that up. I was going to say, I read you were a biomedical engineer major.
Yeah. Yes.
How? I don't know how you did that as an athlete.
It was, I would say I had a lot of great teammates. My roommate, Solomon Egby, he's also a biomedical engineer, also played football, also from Georgia. And so we were like this. We did everything together. Every class together, went to every practice. We were roommates throughout. And so just being able to have one other person who knows exactly what you're going through, I can't tell you how much that meant to me in terms of, just keeping my sanity. Because we just had stuff to talk about all the time. Like, man, this is some bull. Like we're on the bus and say we're going to a game. This homework's due Friday night. We got an extension to make it Friday at midnight instead of Friday at 5. But it's like we have a game tomorrow at noon and we're staying up doing homework. Some engineering concepts that we really can't figure out, that nobody else on this bus can figure out, and that everybody else has already turned in. So it was nice to have someone to vent to, someone to talk to, but also just someone to lean on when stuff got tough. And so we figured out how to make sure that we got through. And we had a lot of conversations of like, man, we need to switch majors. Like, we both were pre-meds. We both wanted to go to med school. And it's like, why are we doing biomedical engineering? And it's like, honestly, we were hard-headed. We were stubborn. We wanted to be great. And people said that we couldn't do it before we even got there and we're in it. And so we're like,
they did.
They didn't say it directly, but they were like,
you sure?
Engineering? Like, really?
Right.
Like, it's not many biomed engineers on the team. It's like, I don't care.
I've never seen that ever on any roster. I'll tell you that. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. But that was another reason I chose Harvard, was because I saw people doing that there. There were people on the team who were biomedical engineers, who were starters on the team, and started for 3 years, involved in their community. We're doing so much outside of football, but then we're also just great leaders within the team. So I was like, this is possible here. And I know it's not possible other places. And that's why it didn't really pique my interest to go to these other places, because I saw how I'd seen the majors of these other schools. And I was like, I'm not.
The list is short.
It's real short. Like, I'm not interested in any of these. Like, so if I'm going to do something that I want to, I know what my future will hold, and I need to be in line with that, what I'm studying in college. And only certain places can do that. So that's the only places I'm really considering. So probably the craziest game of my life, but we're playing Dartmouth, which is an Ivy League team, one of the better Ivy League schools. Basically, I tore my tendon in the finger in the game, like came off to the sideline, tried to grab a water bottle, and like this finger wasn't closing. And I didn't see it. I didn't feel it. It just wasn't moving. Somebody was like, Truman, your hand's messed up. And I was like, what? It was dislocated, so they popped it back into place, taped it together, finished the game. The way the game ended was crazy because I had a strip sack, forced fumble to get the ball back to possibly go ahead. So we were running off the field celebrating like the game was done. You know what I mean? We thought we had done it. Didn't end up scoring. They drove up the field 2 or 3 plays, then have a Hail Mary. I'm in the back of the end zone as one of the jumpers. Not even a jumper, but like the last security people. And they catch the Hail Mary right in front of me. And I'm at the bottom of the pile while all the Dartmouth people are jumping on and celebrating. And my hand is messed up. And my family was in town at the game, and so I had to see them afterwards and stuff, and had another event or something. So all of that was going on. And the thing about the hand was, at the time they told me, you know, if you wait till after the season, although it's only 3 weeks, you can probably play with it, club it up, do whatever. The likelihood of your hand returning to full strength is much smaller. So I was like, man, I really need my hands. Like, as much as I love this football, like, I'm going to need this in the future. So I get the surgery and miss the rest of the season.
Was your decision accepted, supported?
It was accepted. It was accepted.
Okay.
Because they understood what I was trying to do in the future, and
that's huge.
It was.
Because every other coach probably would have.
Right. I can't say it was supported, but eventually they left me alone about it. You know what I mean? Eventually it was like, it's done. And there's nothing left to consider. And the funny thing about it is the finger doesn't actually have the full range of motion now. Like, even now when I close it, it still sticks up a little bit, which affects my grip strength and like other things. But I think that's another story of my life, is making the right decision for the moment, and kind of the consequences or what happens later will unravel themselves. But at the time, this is, with the information that I have, this is the best thing to do. And I have another situation like that where it's like, looking back on it, it's like, why did I do that? But at the time, it was like,
everything happens for a reason.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Tell me about student athlete life at Harvard.
Mm-hmm. I think
being a minority on campus.
Yeah. There's so much to talk about in that, being a minority on campus, because I think I don't know, just a culture shock in general, coming from Atlanta to going to Boston, going to Harvard specifically. Like I remember either my official visit or one of my first times going up there, I'm taking the train from the airport to Harvard, which is like a 30-minute train ride, probably 10 stops. And I'm on the train car by myself and I'm looking around and I'm like, I haven't seen any other black people on this train this entire time. And like coming from Atlanta, that doesn't really happen where you're by yourself that way. And so it was shocking to see that, and even just see the community of black people that were there. Like not everyone will look you in the eye and, you know, give you a nod or say what's up. And just people are coming from such different places because Boston's black population is much more international than Atlanta's necessarily, where it's really people who are from the South whose ancestors have been here and are generational African Americans. That's a term that one of my classmates at Harvard actually came up with, because at Harvard, she realized that a lot of black people have these secondary identities, whether it's they're Nigerian immigrants or they're first generation Nigerian, Caribbeans, they're all these other things. When we look around, it's like there's only a handful of people who don't have these other identities to associate with. So like we have the Black Student Association, obviously, but there's a Nigerian Student Association, Ghanaian Student Association, Caribbean, all these things. There's no secondary identity for people who are descendants of slaves. And so she started a club called Generational African American Student Association, which is like, was supposed to be our little club when everyone else had their time as well. And so I think that was important, just to, not to distinguish, but to realize that, you know, we do have a shared experience and a shared commonality in that we didn't necessarily know that we had. We just felt that we were left out of other spaces, but our experience was common amongst us. And so, I mean, Harvard is still a very small black population. Like out of 1,600 students, was probably 250, 300 of us per grade. And so everybody knows everybody knows everybody's business, which is like another thing in itself.
Small schools. Listen, I know about it. Them small schools tell everything.
Yeah. So that was a challenge in itself, but I think I was lucky to find, I'll say it like this, I found roommates and people on the football team who were HBCU character men, were Morehouse character men. And so people that I felt like I related to, like I said, I wanted to go to Morehouse, Georgia Tech growing up. So that was like already my frame of mind, and my upbringing had led me to that point. But I found people that I felt like would have been at Morehouse with me or would have been at an HBCU with me. And so I think having that community and having them like just be so tight knit and so close then made it easier to branch out and meet various people and go into these other spaces, because I knew I had a backing. I had a group of people who were just really behind me all the way and who understood me. And so, I mean, I was very lucky to find that. I know people who don't find that. And it really just a matter of that we all came there at the same time. It happened to be in this class together, and also just recognize the value of that connection. I think we recognized that we were a safe space for each other in this larger community where people may not always say hello or might not always want to see you. And we offer that to each other.
And what I'm hearing along your journey is that you learn at a very early age the importance of finding your allies.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Please express the importance of it and how it's helped you along the way. And some people may not even understand what I mean by allies. It's really just a safe space for you to be yourself, and you know that they're always on your team no matter what.
Yeah.
And being in these different environments important, especially running the corporate ladder or working, for me professionally, being a woman in sport, it was very important for me to find allies that I knew exactly that were, no matter what happened, I knew they were there for me.
Yeah.
And I'm hearing that in your journey as well. And talk about the importance from then to now.
Yeah, I think it's easy to get caught up. I mean, a large part of going to Harvard is having to know how to play the game, navigate different social circles, and really just button up and put on a face. And so it was so important to have that place where you could metaphorically just let your hair down and just completely be yourself, unapologetically yourself. Whatever weirdness, whatever craziness that is, whatever that is, like you can be that here, and we're going to make fun of you, obviously, but we're not going to like kick you out the group or judge you because of that. Like, that's just who you are. And so, I don't know, I think that also comes from my brothers and I. Like, they were the people who were just keeping me young, keeping me goofy, keeping me honest with myself. Because like when I'm with them, I'm not thinking about what they think necessarily. Granted, I do like to perform and put my best foot forward for them, but I'm not always trying to be perfect around them. Like, they're seeing my humanity, seeing both sides of myself. And so having that relationship with someone at an early age was like, you know what, I need this at any level, wherever I'm at. And so I'm always looking for people that I can open up to and I guess be vulnerable with. And when I got to college, you know, that was my 8 roommates. Like that was who we were. And like you said, we were allies and supported each other and just provided comfort in a space that wasn't very comforting.
Absolutely. And talk about some of the highs and lows as a collegiate athlete.
Mm-hmm.
The list.
Yeah. I mean, I talked about that one low of you know, a game winner on my head, but then just other times where, I don't know, if you just feel like you're doing everything you can and it's still not enough. It's like, how hard can you work without knowing the result of your actions and knowing the work that you put in? And so that's the struggle is showing up every day without knowing what every day is going to look like and what the result will be. And just some of the lows on that, I mean, sleepless nights, like working literally until we had to get on the bus the next morning to go away for a game. Having homework assignments that, you know what, they're just not getting turned in. Like I knew on Monday this was going to be a little too hard. I'm not even going to start working on it. And we're just going to take the L on it and learn from it.
Yes, because I was that person.
Real.
I was that person in college. Like, you know what? I'm not even going to stress myself out this week. I'll take the L. We'll talk about it next week.
It's too much. It's too much. And so just realizing that there were spots you had to have some wins, you had to have some losses. There were some classes that, you know, I'm going to fight to get an A, and there's some classes like I'm really just trying to pass this class. I'm really just trying to get through. There was one class I got an 18% on an exam. There was only 3 exams in the class, and that was one of them. This is an 18% with a cheat sheet, a printed out front and back cheat sheet.
It'd be like that.
And it was like that. It was just one of those like,
it's college.
What I needed was not on that sheet, and there was no way I could find it. So, but those are some of the losses, I think, as well as just, I mean, there's a big one in there as well that I'm not mentioning. So the pandemic period. The pandemic hit Harvard especially hard, just being in the Northeast and kind of Harvard as well being a leader in terms of public health and things like that. So they went the extreme route. I mean, they kicked us off campus in March like everyone else did. We also did not return that fall. So didn't have a season fall 2020 at all. And so we had hope for a while that would work out, that would materialize, that somehow we were going to have a season. And I mean, in that period of COVID, so I took organic chemistry online at home. I was planning to take it on campus and like work another job, but again, weren't on campus, so they offered it online. So did that. It was fine, but again, it's organic chemistry, and like that's online by yourself. So, I mean, it was cool because that was all I was doing at the time. Like I couldn't go outside. I wasn't hanging out with friends. I mean, I guess I was, but it was pandemic and people were still pretty cautious. So that became some of my social time as well. Of like, you know, let's get on Zoom and talk about these organic chemistry problems. And we're talking up to 10 o'clock at night. But so that summer happened, and then they canceled the season kind of halfway through that summer. And I'm just, I don't know. It doesn't feel right to continue doing online school. And again, at the time, I was going to med school. That was the plan. How am I going to get to med school directly after graduation the best way possible? And so, again, I talk about people ahead of me who were doing things that I wanted to do. There was a guy who was a 5th-year senior, and the way he did it was he had a season-ending knee injury. He took a spring semester off, studied for his MCAT, the med school admission exam. A
very hard test.
Very hard test. So studied for that during that time while he was off from school recovering from surgery. So then when he came back, he could play football for the rest of his time and essentially get an extra semester. And so I saw that pathway, and I was like, I want to do that, but I also don't want to have a season-ending injury. You know what I'm saying? So
not exactly.
Not exactly like that, but like this pathway makes sense to me. How am I going to make that happen? And COVID hit, and I was like, this is how I'm going to make that happen. So I withdrew from classes that fall 2020, was living at home with my parents, and studied for the MCAT from September until January when I took it. Was also training and working out at the time because it's like, I don't know, that was just what I was going to do. Like, I had to stay in shape. And so I just remember treating it like a job. Was like, okay, if I can be back home at my desk by 9 starting to study, that'll be good. And that means waking up at 6 o'clock to go to the gym, essentially do the gym stuff, go run, come home, eat breakfast, and then be sitting down at my desk. Yeah. And so I did that for an entire semester. And I say that was a low point, but I was honestly a high point as well because I was so focused and just locked in on what I was doing. Time was just flying by. And I didn't think about what I was missing in terms of being on campus, having a season doing that. But so I take the MCAT January of 2021, before I go back to school. And then they bring us back on campus and start that. But so that allowed me to then have.
How'd you doing it?
I did well. Very, very well.
That's tough. That's super tough.
I did very well. And I will get to this later, but this was, again, I thought I was making the right decision at the time for what I wanted to do. The MCAT exam is only valid for 3 years. So going to NFL, and when I took it, again, I took it before I graduated, before I had even taken all the courses to actually study for the test. But taking that time off then allowed me to come back to Harvard for an extra season.
Okay.
I was voted captain in that last season. Captains are usually fifth years or returning players. And so then in that role, it was just an interesting space because COVID, or a lot of my classmates, my roommates, they transferred out and went to other places. So they went to Duke, UCLA, Notre Dame. Again, playing big time football, had huge opportunities. I was still at Harvard and was the captain of the team. And so that was another thing that was a blessing in disguise, because I felt like being at Harvard allowed me to not necessarily be the star player, but I had a lot more responsibility, a lot more weight, and a lot more pressure on me, and a lot more visibility coming out of the Northeast as the Harvard captain. There's only one captain of the Harvard football team. And so.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you were that one.
I was that one for that fifth year semester. So it's like, again, just things playing out that, I wasn't taking time off to play another semester necessarily, but it was it ended up working out that way as well, and being a huge part of my success. But yeah, MCAT only good for 3 years. So
and that was in 2021.
That was in 2021. So the summer before my last season, so summer 2022, was in the process of applying to medical school. Like, had gotten all the letters of recommendation, was starting applications, making a list of schools.
The league was not even on your horizon.
It was. I was gonna try and do both, honestly.
Okay. Med school and be in the league?
That's what I thought.
Okay.
I was like, again, I knew I was definitely applying to med school. I didn't realize how viable and tangible the NFL was necessarily until that summer, when I really looked at the numbers, looked at even just my stats and height, weight, measurables compared to other players. And I was like, wait, I'm very much in this conversation, more so than I thought. And so I was like, okay, maybe the league is going to be a little bit more serious of a conversation than I thought, but let me still try and do both at the same time. And so plan was to apply to medical school and go out for the NFL draft after that last season in fall 2022. But I realized that summer, just even between training, doing an internship, and trying to apply to med school, like, it's way too much. It's too much on my plate, and the timing isn't necessarily going to work out. I'm not going to know that I'm into medical school until way after the draft. And it's like, say I get drafted or get picked up, then you can't defer medical school also. So once you,
oh wow,
they don't really like that. They choose you for that class, and if you're not coming in that class, then you'll apply again. So it's like, why am I going to apply to essentially not go if something does work out? And at that point, I had to essentially make a bet on myself. Was like, I trust that I can get into medical school at any point, but the NFL has to happen right now if I want it to happen. It has to be this season, this year. And that was even before having my last season. So I didn't really know what that would look like. I was still pretty far away from it, but talked to my parents, really talked to my parents the most about it, and prayed about it. It was just like, please let this work out. Please just let me get back onto a stable pathway if this doesn't go, if following my dreams falls through.
It sounds like you prepared yourself for both.
I did. I did.
Even now, like, you got, if you wanted to, God forbid something happen, you're still set up.
I am. And it just comes from being like a nerd or a student first, of like, that was always plan A. And then it's like, wait, this other stuff is working too. Like, so I think that's in my back pocket, but it's because it was also at the forefront of my mind for so long. Like, that was my main focus. But then, put med school on hold and went NFL route, and was 100% tunnel vision on that for the past year before getting to the Chiefs. And then it's like, okay, you get to a team as a undrafted free agent, and that's again, I didn't know what to expect with that. I was like,
let's talk about it.
Yeah. Even back through the whole process, I mean, I had hopes to get drafted. I had aspirations to get drafted. I was like, everyone tells you different things, but like, oh, second day, which is third or fourth rounds, or third day. And like, people were pretty confident that third day I would get drafted. But I just remember I was at home watching the draft with my family, and I had played in an all-star game, and I'm thinking like, okay, we're getting around 5 or 6, and a lot of these people that I played with this all-star game that were very good still haven't gotten drafted yet. So I'm like, it's not looking like I'm going to get drafted. Yeah. Like, if all these guys haven't been picked yet, then why would it be me? And so, you know, honestly, I'm one of those people that's a realist and is preparing for the worst all the time. So I was prepared to go undrafted before the draft even came up, but still hoped that it would happen. And the undrafted process, sometimes some people say it's better than being drafted in those later rounds. Because you have more agency in terms about the team that you're going to, the fit, and negotiating contract. Yeah. And so I took that very seriously as well. I was like, okay, if I'm going to have the choice to go where I want to go, then I need to make a very educated decision about what's going to be the best fit and why. And so I was doing research on rosters and looking up teams and looking up salaries and, you know, whose contract was going to be up after this year.
Every club is not the same.
It's not the same. It's not the same situation. And so the draft ends, whatever that night it is, like 7:30. Obviously, my family's still there watching, but phone starts ringing. And probably 10 to 15 teams are calling, kind of telling me that now they want to sign me as an undrafted free agent, why it's the best fit, what the contract looks like, yada, yada, yada. And so that was just a crazy time as well, just on the phone with my agent, talking to my parents, trying to update them, but just juggling so much. And it's probably took a couple hours, 3 hours, and was confirmed later that night that I would go to the Kansas City Chiefs. I felt like
the third day still. This happened the same night.
This happened the same night of the last night of the draft. This is that night before I went to bed.
How did you make that decision?
Again, I had done the research beforehand, and so was had notes on teams, had notes on rosters, and then also leaned on my agent a lot to really tell me his true feelings and which teams he had worked with, which teams he felt like had a plan for my future and really were taking that into account, and which teams were, you know, just trying to get a player because they needed somebody to fill a spot. And so leaned on him a lot for more so of that feeling and how to read between the lines of what different coaches and different scouts were saying. But yeah, reached a decision that night. I mean, everything moved so fast because we started rookie minicamp probably 3 days after that.
So when were you on? When were you in Kansas?
Yeah, about 3 days after that, we were in Kansas for rookie minicamp, and so that's where they bring in just all the rookie guys. Like, so there's probably 20 or 30.
This was 2023.
Mm-hmm. This is
last summer,
spring 2023, May 2023. And rookie minicamp starts. They bring in all these rookies. Probably 30 of them are actually signed to the team at this point, and then there's another 60 that are really just tryout guys. And I think for me, it was interesting to see just how many guys wanted to be in the league so bad. Like, they could fill a team with rookies who, they get even more than a team, but like an extended team with rookies who were trying to make it into the league. And every team across the country is doing that. There's people who still were coming out who didn't get invited to get a tryout. And it's just, I think when you think about that and how small the numbers are, how few spots there are.
Less than 2%.
Yeah. Just extremely like lucky and blessed to be in the position that I'm in. Like, I just know God is really working through me to put me in these positions. And now it's like, I feel a responsibility to really be there and show up and put the work in. You know, it's
you
like
had a hell of a rookie year.
Yeah. An insane rookie year. No.
That don't happen too often.
Not at all.
Super Bowl champ.
Not at all.
After all of that.
Yes.
What was that like for you?
I mean, honestly, it was the longest season of my life.
I can't believe that.
I was just, I was amazed at myself that I could keep playing and be physically active for that long. Like, in college, our seasons are 10 weeks. No playoffs, no anything after that. 10 weeks, done. Also, there's not a long preseason camp. Like, we start in August, 2 weeks before regular students start. So it's like the season is significantly shorter. Whereas here, I felt like I had been on go in season mode since the following season ended. Like, since my senior season at Harvard ended, I started training again and was back in it full time. And so just making it through that to then get into the season calmed down a little bit. The practices are a little less physical, but it's still, you're in there every day. I was in a facility 7 days a week, like, you know, for 18 weeks, for 20 something weeks. And that takes a toll, but I felt like was able to really just look up big picture. And also, I don't know, there's something about holding a football, throwing a football that just grounds me all the time. Like every time I hold a football, I'm like, you know what? I really do love this game. This is the same game that I grew up playing with my dad in the backyard. No matter what's around, no matter what pressures I'm feeling, no matter if I'm gonna get cut tomorrow, like I still just enjoy playing football right now. And I think just having that moment most days just made it all okay. You know, it's easy to put up with all.
we have to go back to those moments often because committing yourself to any sport, any basketball, football, any ball, period.
Right.
You have to remind yourself that no matter how effed up this situation looks right now or it feels, it's always another kid that's dying to be in your shoes.
Yes.
Whether you're at the end of the bench, the middle of the bench.
Yes.
Even if you're not even suited up.
Right.
It's kids that would love to be in that position. And the fact that you are a rookie on a championship team alone.
It's insane. I remember I had conversations with my roommates of like, we used to almost talk like being on the practice squad was the goal. Not that it was the goal, but like coming from where we're coming from, it's like, this would be the greatest job in the world. Like we just get to go out there and practice and play football all the time and hang out with these guys. Like, and then it's funny when you get there, how easy that perspective changes or like how quickly you can lose that. It's like, man, we were just wishing to be here. And now you're here and you're not having a good time. You're not having the time of your life. Why not? And again, like you said, you have to have those moments to quickly ground yourself, remind yourself why you're doing this and about how much you love what you're doing. And it's for me, it's always the balance of appreciating where I'm at, but always wanting more. And I feel like that's the story of my life is like, I get into, you get into that next level, to that next tier, and then you realize, oh, I can actually do a little more. I can actually get to the next level. It's right there and very attainable as well. And
you never know till you try.
Right. You never know till you try. So I gotta take that shot. And it's that balance of like, yeah, I'm grateful to be here. I'm happy to be here. But at the same time, I do want more for myself and see more for myself because I'm trying to be the best version of myself. And you know what I mean? I feel like I still have more to offer in this next space, in this next realm.
Did you ever have feelings or moments like, of course the Super Bowl was one, but I would assume, but you just were in awe at your journey? Yeah. I was gonna say, I still have those moments. I'll be wondering like, dang, like as a rookie, like just look around like, dang, I'm here.
All the time. I mean, like I'll do extra work after practice and stuff and we'll stay out. And so sometimes I'm one of the last people leaving the field. And so I'll just be walking in and we'll stand by the door and we'll just look at, just our practice facility with the game facility in the background and like the Chiefs locker room. And it's like, this is stuff you used to see on TV and dream about. And now I put this helmet on every day and just think it's normal. And it's really not. Like, it's not.
No, for real.
It's not normal. I shouldn't be so used to this. I shouldn't be so comfortable to.
It's a blessing that is your norm.
Right. It really is. It really is. And so I try to just give thanks most days for being there, getting through another day. I think, too, I'll go through practice and think about how easy it is to just roll an ankle, to get tripped up, to get nicked up. And it's like to make it through a whole season relatively healthy without having to miss a practice was insane for that long. Like,
for real.
And on the practice squad, like, you have to stay healthy. You know what I mean? If you're not healthy, there's no guarantee that they'll keep you around. You know, you're a practice body at that point. So there's also that pressure of like, I have to be healthy to keep my job. I'm not somebody that they'll keep around necessarily if I'm not. So understanding where my value is being present and being able to do a lot of things. And so I took that very seriously as well in terms of like taking care of my body and trying to be physically able to show up every day in this longest season of my life. But again, just that, all those thoughts come into my head as I'm giving thanks for being at this moment of just like, man, there's so many times this could have gone bad or could have gone left where I wouldn't be here right now. But here I am and still making it.
Yeah. So we're almost coming up on a year almost since the draft, since that night, right? In the last year or so, what have you learned, do you think, about life, about sports? Because being in the league opened you up to a whole... It's a whole different ballgame on the other side. Of course, we all want to get there. Even myself on the business side of things, till I got there. Just like, yo, it's different.
It's different. It's different. What have I learned? It's so many things because
it's a business.
It is. It is. It's a business. It's, I don't know, at every stage you always are questioning, do people really care about me or do people care about what I can provide? And I feel like I'm lucky that I feel like I try to bring value outside of what just my physical body is able to do. And so whether that's just showing up for people, being a person who knows some information that can tell some people, being somebody who shares everything they have with the entire group. And so trying to bring those intangible things to a locker room, to a meeting room, I think is something that's really important to me. And also that's just showing up as a good teammate. I feel like I learned that as captain is like, you know, almost the small things that you do for people are almost more important than the big rah-rah speeches that you can give, of just how can you show somebody that you care about them? Yeah. What can you ask them about their brother or their sister or something going on back home, and just things to make you feel connected to them. And so I think just doing those things, and also just learning to love the process of preparation. Like practice squad, my entire week is the practice week. You know what I mean? Like that's my job. And so you have to love that, because that's all you're doing. There is no game. There is no reward. It's just, what can you do on a daily basis to get yourself better and to get this team better? And so taking that role seriously and really leaning into that and seeing my responsibility in that. Like I felt early on that I was going to play a big part in the Chiefs' success. You know what I mean? Even before I necessarily knew what that was or knew what I was going to do on the team, I was like, my role is very important. So I take it very seriously. I study plays. I watch the opponent film. I watch the opponent's defense so I can mimic them on the field. You know what I mean? So again, showing up to be the best version of myself so that way I can be better for this team. And so just finding all kind of ways to do that. And what you'll do is what you'll see is when you're trying to be the best version of yourself, other people take notice to that and see these little improvements that you're making and see these changes. And they're like, you know what? We're going to take a shot on them. I think that's how I got to be starting my sophomore year in high school, of just coaches noticing like he's getting better day by day. And like, imagine if we really give him more coaching and more attention. And so just putting in that work in for self-improvement will always keep taking you steps in the right direction. And it's really not about if other people notice, because you're going to see the improvement yourself, and you're doing it for yourself, first of all.
Exactly. How has it been creating allies?
Creating allies in the league? I don't know. Everyone comes from such different places, and I'm realizing more and more how kind of unique my story is to be in the league. I think
very much so.
Even just in terms of like the classes and the way that people dealt with academics, like I have a different perspective on that. And so have a different perspective on what it means just in terms of grinding and having no excuses, like where there's not support all around you and you just have to get stuff done. There's people who haven't done this before, but you're going to be the first to do it and figure it out. And nobody's going to know about it, and that's fine.
Right.
And nobody's going to know, and nobody cares, and that's fine. But you're going to do that. And so I think with that, then I'm able to kind of meet teammates where they are and also understand their varying perspectives. And so I think on the team, there's people from all over the country. And so even more so than Harvard, like when you have a collegiate experience, that also defines who you are. And so people come into these places just very different. I'm learning a lot from them. Whether that's learning good things and learning bad things as well, what to do and what not to do, and just thinking about being the person. Yeah, being a sponge, absorbing it all. And I'll say there's still people in this Kansas City locker room who are allies, but even more so people that I aspire to be like when I get older, in terms of how they interact with their family, their faith, how they handle business off the field. And so just taking all those pieces from various people around the locker room to make it into one succinct person is like what I'm trying to do.
And that's what you're supposed to do when you get in those situations. Mm-hmm. Like you find people, okay, I don't want to be like them. Okay, I got one caricature. I don't like them for real, but I like this character trait about them. Or I like the fact that they put their faith first. Like, right. That's something that's not talked about enough. That's very hard to do. Not necessarily hard, but it can be challenging. Yeah. Especially playing sports and playing on Sundays. Mm-hmm. But you see athletes now that are starting to speak more about it, right, which is inspiring, which is good for other athletes to know that it can be done. Right. Because some athletes or some coaches will tell you it can't be done. Right. How can you tell me that? Mm-hmm. But being in those rooms is kind of like a melting pot of some sort. Absolutely. You got different backgrounds. You have some people with degrees, without degrees. You got different colleges, different careers, different families. Yeah. Some people came from money. Some people didn't come from money. And you have to, at that level, you have to find a way to work on one accord with all these 100+ people. Right. I always admire football teams because literally 100 of y'all have to be on one page. Right. That's a lot. My team was 15. And it's still hard to get 15 together. Yeah, but those are things that we don't think about as student athletes or just students of the game, to be honest with you, because it's so many skills that come from being an athlete at any level that carry over into life after sport.
Yes.
Or into wherever you choose to go, because the ball's going to stop.
It is. It's going to stop rolling.
Eventually.
Yeah.
So what is the ultimate goal for you? So say you have a bright future, and we're just at the beginning.
The ultimate goal is still medical school. And I think for me, the biggest thing, at an early age, I realized that, okay, I've been blessed and given a lot of things to be in this position I'm in. Like to be able to have gone to the private school I went to be able to go to Harvard, but then also to come from Atlanta and have a community of Black people around me and parents who were so supportive. I felt like, I don't know, I felt this responsibility as a scholar to really impact people of color's health. And medicine is like the first way that I have seen to do that. And so that's why medical school is the goal, is to have the impact on people of color's health. And I think now that I'm in the league, honestly, and I'm seeing so many different programs, and also I've shadowed doctors, I've shadowed doctors in different specialties in different cities, like all over the country. And so am now broadening my perspective to see, okay, what are people who are not doctors doing to impact people's health? You know, what programs and foundations are being started to do that? Because thinking about coming into it with a different mindset, I think, and a different background. Coming from the NFL is a very different background than coming straight out of undergrad going to medical school. And you're coming to it with the different financial capital as well.
Yeah.
And so what can I do with this that I now have to have the same impact or even have a bigger impact? And so that's where I'm at. I'm still figuring it out, but medical school is the immediate plan. And to be a doctor, a practicing physician, specifically even to own my own practice, to then have more flexibility in terms of what I want to do and the people I can help.
I can't wait to see it.
Thank you.
Do you have a location? You know where?
Probably Atlanta. I love Atlanta, honestly. I love Atlanta.
That'd be dope. That'd be dope. So finally, I asked everyone here, it's our final question. After telling your journey and after talking about and thinking about things that you've gone through, if there is one thing, what do you want to expose about sports? It could be good, it could be bad. It could be, I personally want you to speak more so taking the alternative route. Because a lot of kids would shy away from a biomedical engineering degree. Or they wouldn't even try to put the academics first and know that you're in the league now. From putting your academics first.
Literally.
That doesn't happen too often.
Making decisions all along the way about academics first, and it got me to the NFL, which is insane.
Usually it's the complete opposite. But it's important for kids to hear stories like this and to see it can be done. Yeah. So if you were talking to your younger self or talking to a kid that had aspirations to be a doctor and play in the league, right? What would you tell them?
I would tell that kid that you can do both and don't let people tell you otherwise. There's no reason that athletics takes time away from academics. Sure, it may be true, but you have to create that time. You have to buy it back. You have to be smarter about what you do. And that may mean that other things are cut out, whether that's social life, whether that's, I don't know, even sleep. Like sleep gets sacrificed for a little bit. There's some semesters where it's like, you know what, I have to get 6 hours of sleep this week and this semester. And that's just what it is. But don't let anyone determine what you can't do. And also don't quit anything because it's hard. Everything worth doing is going to be difficult and require sacrifices. And so I think with that, be prepared to work, be prepared to struggle, but also remember what you're doing it for. Keep the main goal ahead and always in sight, and have smaller intermediate goals that you're working towards so you can always feel the progress that you're making. Because it's easy to look at the main goal. If I would have been thinking about the NFL necessarily from the time I was in 6th grade all the way to the present, you would have felt like you're not making any progress. Like, really? You want to go to Harvard and you want to do that? Yeah. Really? You want to not play these last 3 games? Or really you're going to take this time off and delay your time before getting to the league again? But intermediate steps, intermediate goals, there's all these things to ensure progress. And if they're all working in that direction, then you're doing fine.
For sure. But thank you so much, Truman, for stopping by. I truly enjoyed your story. How you feel?
I feel great. I mean, just talking about my story, it's honestly a reflection point for myself as well, just to remember where I've been, what I've gone through. And again, just amazing to see how things have worked out. And like you said, have really been putting academics first most of my life, and has worked out to now get to the NFL, which has been, I'll say, an underlying goal, but one I didn't realize was so possible until, I looked up that season before my senior year, and it's like, wow, I could really do this now.
You're one of few, I'll tell you that. Did I create a safe space for you?
Yes, absolutely.
Good.
Absolutely.
Good. Well, where can we find you?
You can find me on Instagram, truman.l.jones, Twitter as well, and LinkedIn to just,
Glad
on the
you
more
dropped that
professional
in there.
side.
Yes. Yes. Well, once again, thank you so much for sharing your story. Good luck in everything that you're doing. Hopefully bring another championship back. Huh?
Yes, three-peat.
Good luck with everything. And we'll catch you guys next time.
Yeah. Thank you.